It's a sunny Thursday here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee in Seoul. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. President Moon Jae-in's 8-day Southeast Asia tour has officially started, and we take a look at what impact his economic diplomacy in the region may have on the Korean economy. The government lays out a $2.7 billion support fund to help small businesses better cope with next year's minimum wage hike. These stories and more coming right up. President Moon Jae-in met with Korean business leaders who traveled with him to Washington, D.C. just before his summit with Indonesian President Joko Widodo. Dubbed the South Korea-Indonesia Business Roundtable and Summit, our Blue House correspondent Hwang Ho-jun starts us off with more on the event.
A day after his arrival in Jakarta, the first destination of his 8-day Southeast Asia tour, President Moon attended the biggest business forum between Korea and Indonesia since the two countries established bilateral ties. About 400 Korean and Indonesian business leaders were in attendance, including some prominent figures, including Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman and CEO Yoon Boo-geun, Hyundai Motor President Chung Jin-haeng, the presidents of Korea and Indonesia's Chambers of Commerce, and Indonesia's Industry Minister. During the forum, President Moon stressed the need to upgrade Korea's long-standing partnership with Indonesia. And to reach that goal, President Moon pointed out some key cooperation tasks, including a gradual reorganization of joint economic consultative bodies, diversifying the areas of economic cooperation, expanding support for collaboration between Korean and Indonesian SMEs, and last but not least, expanding the trade volume between Seoul and Jakarta. He even pledged to support next year's Asian Game hosted in Jakarta with 5G wireless communication technology. The president also said he's seeking to transform Korea's relationship with the ASEAN nations and bring it up to equal standing as that of Seoul's ties with other major powers. Which is why President Moon introduced his administration's so-called New Southern Policy, which seeks to improve diplomatic and economic ties between Seoul and its Southeast Asian neighbors. According to a Blue House official, the newly coined policy would be the counterpart of the New Northern Policy that seeks to reinforce economic cooperation with Russia and other nations in Eurasia, which President Moon mentioned when he visited Vladivostok in September. The official said that the two frontiers of expanding economic and diplomatic ties with countries and intergovernmental organizations will become a significant path to establish peace and prosperity in the region. Hwang Ho-jun, Business Daily.
And upon their arrival Wednesday night, President Moon Jae-in and First Lady Kim Jong-suk hosted a special banquet for Korean nationals residing in Indonesia. Some 400 expats attended the dinner, and noting it's his first overseas state visit as Korea's leader, President Moon called Indonesia a key member of the ASEAN bloc. Moving forward, he promised to speed up efforts to expand Seoul's diplomatic focus beyond China, Japan, Russia, and the U.S., saying Southeast Asian countries are important partners for Korea. He also pledged tailored support for the Korean community, such as expanding consular services and also enhancing economic partnership between the two countries. Cooperation between Seoul and Jakarta have expanded in size and scope over the years, which includes a joint project to develop submarines and next-generation fighter jets. Chinese companies have signed business contracts and two-way investment deals with the U.S. worth over $250 billion. The agreement was struck during a business event attended by U.S. President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on day 2 of Trump's visit to China. Bloomberg reports most of the deals are likely to be concentrated in the energy sector. At the meeting, Trump, just as he did with his Korean and Japanese counterparts, brought up the thorny issue of trade. He said the U.S. has been suffering from trade deficits of over $500 billion a year and that he wants a fair and reciprocal trade. She said China's investment in the U.S. is rising rapidly, helping to create over 140,000 American jobs. The process of renegotiating the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement may be picking up steam with President Trump's visit to Korea now in the rearview mirror. Trump was notably softer in his tone regarding trade during his stay here in Seoul, adding to hopes that the two sides might be able to resolve their differences in a speedy manner. Our Yoo Jun-hee reports.
Over the course of his two-day visit to Korea, President Donald Trump did not openly criticize the South Korea-US FTA, as some observers had feared. He only made a handful of benign passing remarks on the issue of trade, far removed from his rhetoric from earlier this year, where he threatened to terminate the deal. Following his summit talks with President Moon Jae-in, Trump said the two leaders agreed to improve their trade relations on the principles of fairness and reciprocity. Perhaps positive signs, as Seoul and Washington prepare to start the renegotiation process, but both sides are still eager to take the upper hand. The U.S. is said to be seeking a 2.5% tariff rate on Korean auto imports, as well as additional duties on Korean steel products. According to local government think tanks, Korea's agriculture industry may be the one sector that is most vulnerable to potential changes. This finding was announced by a trio of government research bodies led by the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, which are set to release a joint report on their study on Friday. Seoul could seek to relieve itself from U.S. pressure on these fronts by expanding its acquisition of American weaponry. Korea was the 8th largest importer of U.S. defense products last year, purchasing some $500 million worth of armaments. FTA renegotiations had been initially forecast to begin sometime next year, but if all goes according to plan, some experts now say the process could begin as early as December. Yoo Jun-hee, Business Daily.
It's going to be an important couple of weeks ahead for the Korean economy as President Moon Jae-in has a series of summits lined up, which started with his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump this week. And to tell us more about this, as well as the upcoming APEC forum, Professor Yang Jun-suk from the Catholic University of Korea joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Happy to be here.
All right, so the biggest focus of President Moon's summits with his U.S. and Chinese counterparts this week is undoubtedly North Korea and other diplomatic issues. Now, at this point, we're wondering, how could these issues affect Korea in an economic standpoint?
Okay, well, obviously, North Korea's threat will affect how people feel about the Korean economy. So far, though, it hasn't had as much effect as a lot of people thought, partially because North Korea has made threats before and nothing's really come out of it, partially because it is such a low probability event. It's caught a lot of news, so people think that the probability of war is a lot higher than it is. But if you're doing, say, things like sovereign credit rating, you have to look at the real probabilities, and I think they concluded that the actual possibility of conflict is very, very small.
Well, now eyes are also on how Korea will try to find a solution to the ongoing Chinese economic retaliation over Seoul's deployment of THAAD. Now, how do you see these things playing out?
Okay, well, I think China has concluded, especially with President Trump's visit, that Korea will not give up its THAAD deployment. So I think they thought that it would be counterproductive to continue their retaliation. So Korea and China agreed on some certain conditions, apparently, some of it which include no additional THAAD deployment, Korea will not go into missile defense with the United States. Korea will not make a explicit military alliance with China and U.S. and Japan. And there's a lot of question over how, was this a solid promise or was this something that both countries will try to maintain? We'll have to see, but at least for now, I think the biggest problems will be over. But THAAD retaliation has not been as big as a lot of Koreans feared. It's been limited to certain areas of the economy, tourism, K-pop, and cultural exports. In the areas of intermediate goods, THAAD retaliation hasn't really made itself felt at all.
All right, then, well, I mean, what can we expect from President Moon's economic diplomacy during his Southeast Asia trip?
Okay, well, APEC has started out to be a trade and investment liberalization forum. Right now, it's gone expanded into something much bigger. So they handle things like human capital development, how to deal with natural disasters and financial crisis, and a lot of political problems, gender inequality as well. So I think for this particular meeting, I think North Korea issue, the defense issue, will take most of the agenda. Having said that, though, the APEC countries contain about 70% of Korea's exports. And the sort of the heart of APEC is a group of 10 Southeast Asian countries, ASEAN. That's right now Korea's exports to ASEAN countries are about 16% of Korea's exports. During the THAAD retaliation, we talked a lot about need to diversify Korea's exports to go to countries other than United States and China. And if we are going to expand, especially in the short term, ASEAN countries are actually very good places to try to expand our trade. So even though North Korea issue will probably take most of the discussion time, I think attempts by businessmen who are accompanying President Moon to try to expand their contacts throughout ASEAN is a very good idea.
Now, also during the APEC summit, it's likely that the member countries will discuss the mega Trans-Pacific Partnership deal. Now, where is future headed without the U.S.? And what are some of the things that will be discussed in regards to that? Okay, well, President Trump said before he started the trip that he's not interested in reviving the TPP agreement. And that's going to cause a lot of problems, I think, with the remaining TPP countries. Because if you look at the TPP members, United States took about 60% of the size of the TPP. Right. And a lot of countries made concessions because they were very interested in cracking the U.S. market. Now, since such a big proportion of that is gone, if they want to maintain the TPP, they will either have to renegotiate to try to create a new balance between the remaining members, or wait and hope that U.S. comes back, but that's probably not going to be until after President Trump leaves the presidency and you get a new president in the United States. As I mentioned before, the APEC has started out to be a trade and investment liberalization forum. So one of their long-term goals was to try to have FTAs among all APEC countries. So they call that the FTAP, FTA of Asia Pacific, and the TPP negotiation, as well as the RCEP negotiations, which are being led by China and the ASEAN countries, were sort of meant to be as a middle path to get to the FTAP. And because President Trump is so reluctant to have an FTA, especially with multiple regional partners, we'll have to see, first of all, usually during an APEC meeting, the leaders, the presidents and the prime ministers, they express support for more trade, WTO negotiations, and so on. We'll have to see, first of all, whether that type of statement remains in this leaders meeting, because this is the first leaders meeting with President Trump. And not in APEC, but in other meetings in World Bank or IMF, President Trump has come up very strongly against including statements on free trade and liberalization. And then secondly, we'll have to see what is there going to be any changes in the position of the United States as it concerns the FTAP agreement? If it does, they do change some positions on the FTAP, then that may create changes in the APEC strategy to achieve the FTA of the Asia Pacific as well. So we'll keep a close eye on if those things are being discussed at the upcoming APEC summit, as well as the summits lined up for President Moon this week and the next. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Some good news for low-income earners here in Korea. The minimum wage is being raised sharply next year, hopefully giving them more economic freedom. However, with concerns rising over its effect on small and medium-sized businesses, the government has rolled out a multi-billion-dollar plan to soften the blow. Our Kim Hae-sung has more.
Korea's minimum wage is set to increase by 16% next year to over 7,500 won, or $6.70 an hour, marking the biggest annual jump in almost 2 decades. To help support small businesses cope with the increase in labor costs, Finance Minister Kim Dong-yeon unveiled the government's support plan on Thursday.
Income inequality has grown rapidly recently, and it's holding back domestic consumption and growth. The minimum wage hike can foster income-led growth, and we've laid out a support fund worth 3 trillion Korean won to help small businesses.
The government plans to directly fund small businesses where around 80% of workers get paid less than the minimum wage. Small businesses employing fewer than 30 people will get around $117 per worker a month in government support. It will be limited to workers earning less than $1,700 a month, which would be less than 120% of minimum wage monthly income, or $1,400. Small businesses earning more than $550,000 a year in taxable income will not be eligible for the subsidies.
For businesses that hire apartment security guards or cleaners where layoffs are a concern due to the minimum wage hike, we'll still provide them with funds even if they employ more than 30 people.
To get the subsidy, businesses will need to meet 2 criteria: pay the workers the minimum wage and also apply for employment insurance. The subsidy plan is set for 2018 only and still needs to be approved by the Budget Committee at the National Assembly. Kim Hae-sung, Business Daily.
Firms taking part in this year's Korea Sales Festa posted sales of $9.7 billion during the government-led 34-day-long promotion period. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said the 100 major companies taking part in the event saw a 5.1% growth in sales compared to last year. However, it fell short of the 12.5% growth seen last year due to the long holiday period and a sharp fall in the number of foreign tourists. The sales increase is expected to boost Korea's fourth quarter consumer spending and GDP by 0.13% and 0.06% respectively. Consumer watchdogs pointed out the need to further expand promotions for the event and provide better discounts for price-savvy customers. Today marks exactly 100 days since the Korean government launched one of its strongest housing market regulations back in early August. So just how effective has it been? Our Lee Ju-young tells us more.
Today marks the 100th day since the introduction of new housing market regulations as a means to stabilize the country's surging property market. And 3 months in, Korea Appraisal Board said home prices are now indeed growing at a slower pace, particularly in September at 0.07%, although prices have climbed back up again the following month. But apart from Seoul, home prices in other regions have decelerated over the same period, from what was 0.12% to about 0.07%, further widening the gap in home prices between Seoul and places outside of the nation's capital.
Consumers seem to be more interested in investing in homes in Seoul than other places which have a sluggish economy.
Come 2018, experts say Korea's real estate market is expected to stabilize even further as construction companies expand the supply of new apartments and with world's major central banks poised to raise interest rates. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
The global market for robots is growing at a rapid pace, expanding at an average rate of 20% annually. Korea has long been an IT powerhouse, so where does the country currently stand in the robotics industry? Let's take a closer look.
This robot factory is the largest in the country, producing 50 different types of industrial robots. These robots are actually used in the assembly lines for automobiles and displays. From transportation to assembly, sealing, pressing, and casting, robots are able to carry out most jobs in the production process.
특히나 도장 로봇의 경우에는 사람들이 작업하기 되게 어렵기 때문에 그걸 자동화할 수 있게 해주는 것이고, LCD 로봇은 LCD의 판넬이 워낙 얇고 가볍기 때문에 사람이 운송할 수 없을 정도로 얇습니다. 그래서 로봇을 사용하지 않을 수 없는 현장 상황이 되겠고요. 로봇이 없이는 그런 전체 자동화.
Fully automated operations are not possible without the help of robots. This is why robots are essential elements in the fourth industrial revolution and smart factories.
The robotics industry is a key sector to keep an eye on in the era of fourth industrial revolution. The technology has advanced far beyond what humans are capable, combining the Internet of Things and AI. The global robotics market is growing at a rapid pace of 20% annually. Global companies like SoftBank, Honda, and Amazon have already entered the market, heating up the competition. Korea has the highest density of industrial robots in the world. The country is also ranked at number 4 in terms of production scale, leading the industrial robots market. The city of Daegu in Gyeongsangbuk-do province in particular has been drawing focus by adopting robots in production facilities. This area only had 24 robotics-related companies 5 years ago, but in just 3 years, that number has grown by threefold.
대구 지역에 추진하고 있는 로봇 클러스터.
The Daegu area is becoming a robotic cluster. The infrastructure is well established, being home to the Korea Institute for Robot Industry Advancement and Daegu Gyeongbuk Institute of Science and Technology. Many clients are looking for industrial robots here, so we've moved to an adjacent area to provide service to our customers.
Until the early 80s, Daegu was known to be a traditional textile city. After the Daegu Gyeongbuk Free Economic Zone was designated in 2008, the region has taken a new leap forward. A number of industrial clusters were built to foster future industries like Technopolis and Susong Medical District. Daegu Gyeongbuk is also ranked number 1 in the world in the number of patents per R&D population. The region actively supports new growth engines with a solid R&D foundation. Various research infrastructure has been built here, with national institutes focused on the high-tech robotics industry. The region is seeking a large-scale integration of high-tech industry in Korea. This institute designs and develops parts and equipment needed in construction sites. Currently, the institute is in the midst of developing a motion simulator. The equipment evaluates machinery performance through virtual experiences.
저희는 이 장비를 통해서 사람의 어떤 근피로라든지 아이 트래킹 같은 그런 측정법들을 통해서 그 건설기의 최적의 퍼포먼스, 즉 조작감을 가질 수 있도록 앞으로도 그런 연구들을 진행해 나갈 거고.
As the construction industry is often exposed to dangerous situations, the importance of robots is increasing to reduce accidents and achieve high efficiency. Research and development of new technology is expanding with the creation of test and evaluation facilities around R&D centers.
소재 부품에
From the designing of the components to analysis, evaluation, and efficiency test, everything can be conducted here. We hope to dominate the global construction equipment market by reducing development costs and increasing quality and reliability to strengthen global competitiveness.
Despite being the IT powerhouse, Korea is a late starter in the robotics industry. But it's developing new technologies at a faster pace than anyone in the era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Expectations are high as government agencies and private firms come together in one city to intensively cultivate the industry.
And that wraps it up for today. But we'll be back tomorrow with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.